Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Let's try that one more time. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Why did it go lower? The point of trying again. Okay, let's try it one more time. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Thank you. Okay, today we have a very, very special guest. His name is Mr. Bill Bucknam. He's a former assistant United States attorney. He's testified before Congress a few times, and he is a long-standing friend, like I would like to call him, of Africa. He's done business there the last 42 years. There's so much wealth of experience that he brings to share with us today. And he's also been a long friend of Lynn. He was just telling me when he first arrived on this campus in 1960, it was just cows and a dirt road on North Military Trail. So today he'll be sharing with us on his experiences working, and I can't wait for you to hear it. But without much ado, I'd like you to make welcome Mr. Bill Bucknam.
Good morning. My name is Bill Bucknam. I'm very pleased to be here today. As I mentioned on the way over here, I recall my first time walking on this campus back in 1965. We came here for debate tournaments, if you can believe that, high school debate tournaments. This was the campus of Marymount College for Women. And all this area was nothing more than a cow pasture. I-95 did not exist. And Military Trail was basically a dirt road. So as you can see, things have changed dramatically. Before I get to the substance of what I've come to discuss today, I'd like to tell you something about myself and the journey I've been on, which has taken me to many interesting and wonderful places and provided me with many challenges and learning experiences. I know that none of you were around in 1968, but I can tell you that 1968 was a year of upheaval for me personally and also for the world. In January, the Tet Offensive took place in Vietnam. It was a major escalation of that war. On April 4th, Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated and riots broke out nationwide. On June 6th, presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy was assassinated in Los Angeles. Demonstrations and student demonstrations and violent riots were taking place in Columbia University in Paris. And in October of 1968, two African-American medal recipients at the Mexico Olympics raised their fists in a Black Power salute, which was the first time that had ever happened. In August of 1968, the Soviet Union invaded Czechoslovakia to quash what they perceived as an effort to democratize the country. 1968 was a year of personal grief as well. My father was killed in a car accident in February. My best friend killed in a car accident 3 weeks later. I had been accepted at Loyola University in Rome for the term of August of 68 to May of 69. As we boarded the bus to go to O'Hare Airport to leave for Rome, we passed by Grant Park. If you're familiar with Chicago, that's a major park in downtown Chicago. And we were able to witness the historic violent protests that were taking place against the war in Vietnam at the Democratic National Convention. My experience in Rome during this time opened my eyes for the first time to the world. In April of 1969, Loyola arranged for a tour of the Soviet Union, and I was able to actually see the Soviet Union at the pinnacle of Soviet power. We went to Moscow, Leningrad, which is now St. Petersburg, and Kiev. We ended our tour in Warsaw, and it was very clear to all of us that the Poles absolutely despised their Soviet master. At the end of that year, I transferred to George Washington University in DC, from which I graduated in May of 1970. I later attended Georgetown University Law Center at nighttime and graduated in May of 1976. I was a paralegal supervisor in the United States Attorney's Office at that time. In September, I was sworn in as an assistant United States attorney. because I enjoyed what I did for the U.S. Attorney's Office, but I really didn't have any interest in representing criminals. So I decided to do something different with my life. I resigned in March of 1980 to take a position with a local law firm, which had also agreed to create a consulting firm to do international business. In October of that year of 1980, I was reading the Washington Post on Sunday, and I saw an ad welcoming Nigerian President Shehu Shagari to Washington to visit with President Carter. It was signed compliments of David Eller, president of MW Pump Corp Company, the manufacturer of the hydroflow pump for Nigeria's Green Revolution, Deerfield Beach, Florida. I had gone to high school in Broward County. So the next day I called David Eller to introduce myself and to tell him that I thought I could help him. He offered to send me a ticket to come and meet him after the presidential election. And I came in November to meet with him, and M&W Pump became a client of the consulting firm. In August of the next year, David invited me to come back to speak with him again and offered me a full-time job with the company. My first day was September 11th, 1981. M&W Pump Corporation, now MWI Corporation, was formed in Deerfield Beach in 1926. Today, MWI is one of the leading pump manufacturers, and our hydroflow pumps are used worldwide for irrigation, drainage, and for flood control. In 2005, September of 2005, when Katrina hit New Orleans, a levee broke, and almost instantaneously, the entire city was underwater. The Army Corps of Engineers estimated it was going to take them 9 months to remove all of the water. The use of our hydroflow pumps in New Orleans made it possible to remove all of that water in 21 days. And the next year, the Army Corps of Engineers purchased about 200 of our pumps to provide hurricane protection for the city of New Orleans. Those pumps remained in operation until last year, when they were replaced by a permanent pump station. And during that period of time, there were several hurricanes, but there was never another Katrina-like flooding of the city. My first trip to Africa was to Nigeria in March of 1983. Tomorrow I leave for Kinshasa on what will mark my 84th trip to the continent. I became something of an expert in the use of export-import bank financing in Africa, and I've been invited to testify 3 times before congressional committees on African trade and investment. In 1997, I was invited to participate in a trade mission to Africa led by Congressman Charles Rangel at the behest of President Clinton for the purpose of promoting the African Growth and Opportunity Act, which was stalled in Congress. After I returned, I created the African Growth and Opportunity Act Coalition, a business lobbying group, and co-chaired it with Elliot Hall of Ford Motor Company, who was also on the Wrangell Trade Mission. The AGOA Coalition played a key role in demonstrating and organizing support of the business community for AGOA. And Elliot and I were honored to be invited by President Clinton to sit on the South Lawn of the White House for the signing ceremony in May of 2000. In May of 2001, I was invited by President Bush to a ceremony in the Rose Garden of the White House to mark the first anniversary of AGOA. I was later invited to participate in a briefing of the Bush administration's African trade policy to take place at the White House, of all days, on September 11th, 2001, which was also the 20th anniversary of my employment with MWI. I left Palm Beach International Airport on a 7 a.m. nonstop U.S. air flight bound for Reagan National. I intended to return to Palm Beach later that evening. As I exited the aircraft, I received a call advising me what was going on in New York. And before the call ended, a second plane had hit the Trade Center. As I stood in front of Reagan National to get a cab into the city, a large cloud of very thick black smoke passed by. And a short time later, I learned that something had hit the west side of the Pentagon, which was about 2 miles from where I was standing. As I drove into the city, I looked out the back window of the cab, and I could see that the west side of the Pentagon was on fire, which was a fact that had not yet been reported. In DC, people were running out of buildings, including out of the White House. We passed by. At one point, traffic came to a grinding halt. I had to get out and walk to the law office of a friend. Cell service stopped. There was no television in my friend's office, so we kind of sat there for a few hours, really not understanding what was going on. I finally made my way over to my brother's house in Arlington. Since all flights had been grounded nationwide, I would not be returning to West Palm Beach that night. On Thursday, this 2 days later, I was able to find a rental car, and I began the 1,000-mile journey home, which I had arrived Friday afternoon. What I'd like to do now is talk a little bit about the problem of safe drinking water in Africa. This is an issue that everyone in this room, including me, takes for granted. During the night, when we feel like we're thirsty, we get up, we go to the refrigerator, we get a glass of water. In the morning, we brush our teeth, we make a pot of coffee. We never think about the possibility that water could make you sick or even kill you. But in Africa, every morning, a woman or a child picks up a bucket and walks a long distance to a polluted river or stream to fetch water. Because of the contaminated water, children are often too sick to go to school. Men and women are too sick to work. Women, if you can believe this, women in maternity wards are forced to get out of bed after giving birth, pick up a bucket, and walk about a mile to a river to return with contaminated water. A child dies every 9 seconds in sub-Saharan Africa from the effects of drinking contaminated water. When we were doing an irrigation project in Nigeria many years ago, we were approached by a medical missionary by the name of Dr. John Tarpley, who was a medical missionary from Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore. Dr. Tarpley told us that he was losing half of his babies when they went from the mother's breast to the local water supply. And he told us we had to do something to help him. He said, Dr. Tarpley, we don't know anything about village water supply. This is not what we do. He said, well, you know about water and you need to come up with a solution. So we took his challenge. We undertook a research and development project. We looked at everything that was used to provide water in a village. Traditional hand pumps, solar pumps, etc. The problem is that with hand pumps, there's no filtration system. So you're basically getting whatever comes out of the borehole. And the same is true with solar pumps. The problem with solar pumps, in addition to the fact that the batteries are often stolen, so they're unusable. According to World Bank studies, and this is true even to this day, traditional hand pumps are broken down and completely useless 60% of the time. Even when they operate, they are extremely difficult for women and children to operate. And it's women and children who have the obligation of getting the water in the morning for the village, for their homes. We developed a project, based on our research, we developed a product called Solar Pedal Flow. Do you have the link to that? Yes. Okay. So if you take a look at the link when you get a chance, basically the solar pedal flow is a device that sits on top of a borehole. During daylight hours, the water is brought up to the surface automatically with the use of solar power, solar panels. At nighttime or on cloudy days, a person could sit in the attached chair and actually pedal the water to the surface. So 24/7, there's water coming up from the borehole. As the water is brought up, it is filtered down to 1 micron, which eliminates virtually every pathogen known to man, so that the water that it produces is absolutely safe to drink. It is then pressurized and stored in a 10,000-liter overhead tank for village distribution. People often ask, what is the definition of safe water? And believe it or not, there isn't one. I define it as water that's not going to make you sick or kill you. The UN created some guidelines. In 2000, the Millennium Development Goals. And basically the goal was to reduce by half the number of people who do not have access to safe drinking water. That goal was not met. And in 2015, the UN came out with the Sustainable Development Goals. And Sustainable Development Goal number 6 requires each signatory, and every country in Africa is a signatory, to provide safe drinking water to every citizen by 2030. In our opinion, this goal cannot be achieved by using hand pumps or solar pumps because there's no filtration system. So there's no guarantee that the water they produce is going to be actually safe to drink. After we received the patent for the solar pedal flow, we decided to give several units away to see how they would be received. Shipping a fully assembled unit to Africa was astronomically expensive. And we also had to send someone to the country to oversee the drilling of a borehole and the installation of the unit. Along the way, we learned some valuable lessons on sustainability and instilling a sense of ownership. We installed 1 unit, and almost overnight, thousands of people moved to be close to the safe water source. We went back 9 months later, and the unit was down for want of a $3 ball bearing. Villagers were waiting for the people who gave them the unit to come back and fix it. On another occasion, we donated 1 unit to Nelson Mandela's home village in South Africa, And on the very first night, the solar panels were stolen. We quickly learned that the women of each village had to be empowered to provide security for each unit and to collect a fee from each person taking water to put it into a kitty for future repairs. The women also provided security for each unit to protect against damage and theft of solar panels. And we finally figured out a way to attach the solar panels in such a way that made them more difficult to remove. We thought that the United Nations Development Program would have an interest in this particular device since they were still using hand pumps, believe it or not. So we approached them and they required us to provide a comprehensive list of every part in the solar panel flow, which we refused to do because we were not interested in having somebody reverse engineer it. To this day, UNDP continues to use hand pumps, even though they are fully aware that they're incapable of providing safe drinking water. NGOs and charities, and even the World Bank, also exclusively use hand pumps with the full knowledge that they are incapable of producing safe drinking water. Around 2004, I visited the headquarters of a very well-known charity in Senegal. The office was quite palatial. There was a fleet of new Range Rovers parked in front of the building. There was a swimming pool in the inner courtyard. And we met with the country director who bragged about their advertising campaign that showed photos of children in various countries and urged donors to adopt them by sending $20 a month. Then, somewhat astonishingly, he said that they never actually spend even $1 in the country where a particular child is supposedly located. Today on LinkedIn, this charity brags about the millions of people they have delivered safe drinking water to, even though they are aware that hand pumps are inherently incapable of delivering safe drinking water. I'm personally convinced that NGOs and charities continue to use hand pumps, which they know will fail, because they will then be able to go out to their donors for another round of fundraising. I know that sounds strange, but that's my personal opinion. Because of the astronomical cost of shipping a fully assembled solar pedal flow, we've now decided to ship completely knockdown kits for assembly in a particular country. The assembly creates jobs for assemblers, installers, and people to do maintenance work over a 3-year period. We're now beginning a demonstration project of 15 units in Malawi. When I met with President Chakwera in August of 2021, and explained this, how the solar pedal flow worked, he got quite excited, as I knew it would, because I had read about his early childhood. As a child, he was responsible for fetching water in a bucket, and he knew that the water he was bringing back was virtually always contaminated. We were hopeful that this demonstration project will lead to many more solar pedal flow units in Malawi, which will help them reach the goal of Sustainable Development Goal number 6 to provide safe drinking water for every citizen by 2030. I'd like to leave you with a few takeaways from my presentation. First, whatever you end up doing in your career in the future, ensure the sustainability of your project. Your project must be capable of continuing long after you go on to do something else. Excuse me, getting a stupid spam call, which I get about 10 times a day. Second, also ensure that you create a sense of ownership of the beneficiaries of whatever you do, because without that, your project will fail. Third, always remember that if you are selling American-made goods and services, regardless of your citizenship, it is a violation of the U.S. Foreign Corrupt Practices Act to give anything of value to do business abroad. Likewise, if you pay someone something in U.S. dollars, regardless of your citizenship, you are subjecting yourself to the jurisdiction of the U.S. Department of Justice to be prosecuted under the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. That's something you don't want to do. My experience is, on occasion, government employees have been relentless in their demands to be paid something, and you have to be firm in your position to pay them absolutely nothing. Fourth, you are bound to be confronted with an ethical dilemma at some point in your career. And I refer to this as doing the right thing, but for the wrong reason. Let me give you an example. Seasonal flooding is a problem in Africa, from Egypt to South Africa. Crops are destroyed, personal property is destroyed, and thousands of people are innocent and lose their lives as a result of seasonal flooding. The government of Egypt actually did something about this a number of years ago. They used World Bank funds to create emergency centers located geographically throughout the country, and they stocked them with our hydroflow pumps so that they're ready to address flooding problems whenever they exist. But in some countries, the decision to do something about seasonal flooding is going to be guided by the edict. Well, it will help the president to get reelected. You know, from my perspective, if I know that supply and flood control pumps are going to save crops from being destroyed, save property from being destroyed, save the loss of human life, I don't really care if it has the collateral effect of getting the president reelected, because I know that what I'm doing is going to be for the good of the country. But you will be at some point confronted with such an ethical dilemma. Lastly, I will leave you with the thought that you can be whoever and whatever you want to be in this world. Never tolerate anybody telling you that you cannot do something. When I was leaving, I guess that's it. When I was leaving the U.S. Attorney's Office in 1980, people asked me what I was going to do, and I applied something in the international arena. They looked at me like I was crazy, and one person said, "What do you know about that?" I said, "Well, nothing, but I'm going to learn." You know, I'd like to think that after 43 years, I've actually learned something, and that I might have made a small difference in the world. So, thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Yes.
You said you went to Georgetown University.
Law school.
Law school. I grew up near the area outside the DMV. I went to Georgetown Prep. How did that area shape your kind of foundation here for starting your career?
You mean my education?
Yeah, education.
Well, because I was working full time, I was going to law school at night, 6 days a week, Monday through Friday at night and Saturday morning, and I did that for 4 years. It was an excellent education. I would not be who I am today without the education at Georgetown, for sure. Yes.
How do you feel that your work within that particular area with water shaped the individual you are today? And how do you see that in the future shaping more of who you are?
Well, you know, I've been doing this for a long time. I'm not sure how much longer I'm going to do it, but I enjoy what I'm doing. I hope I'll be able to do it for as long as possible. I got into this kind of accidentally, quite honestly. And the whole issue of safe drinking water began with Dr. Tarpley's challenge to us in Nigeria. When we did that research and development program and realized the inherent defects of the equipment that was being used to deliver water in a rural village without electricity. Unfortunately, there are a lot of countries that refuse to spend the money to solve the problem. And I'm not sure where they're going to get it. If they can't come up with the money in their national budget, the fact is sustainable development goal number 6 is not going to be achieved. It's that simple. And they're going to have to create a new goal after 2030. 2030 is almost here. So, yeah. Yes.
You grew up in a time of segregation. So I kind of just want to know how it was for you. Like you said, within your 20s, you know, you were seeing so many protests going on, so much was happening along the lines of both desegregation as well as the Vietnam War, protests against it, as well as like flower power and everything. How was that for you? Because this is like a very revolutionary time period.
No, it was. And I tried to stay above it as much as possible because I had goals that I wanted to achieve and I had to get the education I needed in order to do that. So since my father was no longer around, I was working full time and going to school at night in order to pay for my education. But I can remember very clearly the Vietnam anti-war demonstrations that were going on in Washington. I went from working in the law library of a local law firm to being an investigator at the public defender's office. And on the first day, May 3rd of 1971, was the largest anti-war mobilization in the history of the United States. They locked up thousands of people in RFK Stadium. And so my first job at the public defender's office was to go over and interview those people and try to get them out on bond. So that kind of brought home to me very quickly the whole anti-war situation. Yes.
The charities that you were describing, you're saying they're using hand pumps, and how when you went there, they had all these nice cars, and you could obviously see the money wasn't going to the right place. How do we make sure that the charities we donate are actually doing the right thing? Are there any charities you recommend?
Well, if you are dealing with a charity that's telling you they're using hand pumps, you should know automatically that's virtually a scam, in my opinion, because they know that they're going to fail. So there's no point. They would be better off doing nothing than to provide people with a hand pump that's not going to guarantee them access to safe drinking water. You know, you're just going to have to do your due diligence. But don't always believe what they promote on LinkedIn, because a lot of times that's, you know, meaningless. Yes.
You should have gotten this whole thing accidentally. So my question is, would you, like, how do you know what you know now? Would you repeat it?
I would, yes.
Why?
Because I think that I've grown personally and professionally doing what I've been doing for the last 42 years. I've enjoyed it. I know more about places like Nigeria than most Nigerians do, quite honestly. And James may attest to that. We were talking about Nigerian politics on the way over here, and I have a lot of experiences over the years that I don't regret, and I would be happy to do again. Yes.
Which countries on the continent would you say you have done the most work in, or you have this work in for?
Probably Nigeria.
Okay.
Nigeria, I personally did export-import bank financing for, in the 1980s, $82 million for river basin development authorities. And that money enabled Nigeria to become self-sufficient in food production for the first time. Today, unfortunately, they've forgotten all about that. And the last time I met with the Minister of Water Resources 2 years ago to talk about buying more of our pumps, all he could do was complain about the price of diesel fuel, which had become astronomical because of the pandemic. And I said, well, I can't do anything about that, Honorable Minister, but all I know is you're not going to be able to fulfill your mission if you buy solar pumps that don't pump sufficient water to grow food. So, and so he sat back and basically decided to do nothing. His job is also for flood control, and the president came out with an edict about 2 months ago to come up with an action plan to do something about flooding, which in Nigeria is a horrible, horrible problem. And as far as I know, to this date, there's been no action plan presented. Yes.
A follow-up. So knowing and seeing that level of apathy, and even I'm sure you've also seen some corruption, you've seen money disappear if you've worked on the continent that much. How do you continue to go? Like, what keeps you going? Like, what are the moments that have made you think, well, it's still worth it, I'm still gonna go on, because I'm pretty sure there's like a lot of bumps in the roads.
Well, you know, there is some level of corruption. I've been personally confronted a couple of times with government officials who, in actual meetings, where they have demanded that I pay them money to sign a contract. And I said, you know, I'm not going to jail for this project. Now, if you want to go to jail, that's your choice, but I'm not going to jail. So the answer is no, there will be no money. So we either sign the contract or we're out of here. And that is definitely, it's a huge problem. Yes.
Throughout your career, has there been that one defining moment that you realized that this was what you were called to do?
You know, I was honored to be invited to participate in 2 presidential trade missions, the first with Congressman Rangel and the year later with Commerce Secretary Bill Daley. And it was quite a heady experience to go to Andrews Air Force Base and get on a presidential jet and go with a group of high-level people to various places in Africa and to be treated royally wherever you went. I mean, this is an experience I had never had before. So that was a great experience. But, you know, if I've always had a sense that what I'm doing will make a difference in people's lives, whether it's growing food, preventing floods, ameliorating floods quickly in order to, get things back to normal as quickly as possible. So if I can do those kinds of things, I'm happy, with what I've done. Yes.
How do you make sure that after you're gone from Earth, that this whole project continues?
Well, that goes to the issue of sustainability. And I'm working with one person in Malawi, and I have preached to him repeatedly for the last 8 years. And we had some difficulty getting a project going under the old administration because there were demands for money. I said, Charles, we will not pay any money. I'm not going to jail for this project, and neither are you. So the answer will be no. We will not have any business if we have to pay somebody money. So he got the message. And Charles is now heading up this initial demonstration project, and we hope that that will lead to probably 300 to 400 more units by this time next year. So that's how you have to try to operate. Anybody else?
I have a question.
Yes, James.
A lot of your work has to do with more or less networking, meeting people, managing relationships, and even listening to you speak about, intricately how the green building came about. That was purely a fruit of your personal relationship with Dr. Green. So my question is, over the last 40 years, what are some of the things you do to network, manage relationships, keep these conversations going years after? In the case of even Lynn University, your relationship with President Ross Sr. has spilled over to President Kevin Ross. So how do you manage almost this transgenerational relationship?
Well, I have a way of keeping in touch with people in various ways, whether it's email, telephone calls, or even on LinkedIn. I have found that LinkedIn is a valuable tool. And if you're not on LinkedIn, I invite you to create a profile and use LinkedIn to enhance your professional career after you leave here. So that's basically it.
So do you have a system to it, or do you just randomly reach out to people that you connected with?
Well, I will often do a search for a particular country and go through the various profiles of people in a country. This is how I found Louis Mbombo in Democratic Republic of the Congo, was on LinkedIn. And we had been connected for a period of time, and I was impressed with it. He does postings all the time. I was impressed with the posting he did, and I reached out to him and told him what we were doing and what I wanted to do in the Congo. So really 6 months later, I was physically in the Congo as a result of that reach out on LinkedIn with Louis. So LinkedIn is a invaluable tool. And I will also say that WhatsApp is an invaluable tool to be able to communicate 24 hours a day on WhatsApp, sending messages to people or forwarding messages to other people is invaluable. And it's all for free. Yes.
What is some advice that you would give to your younger self who is starting in the work that you do now?
That's a good question. I don't know what I was kind of flying by the seat of my pants when I started this whole thing. So it's difficult to come up with advice, but just define your goal and figure out a way to reach your goal and stick to it, even when you get depressed. On these projects take a long time. This is not something that happens overnight. This thing in the Congo with Lewison, I was there for the first time in December. I'm going back now to sign 2 contracts. That, in my experience, has never happened that quickly. So every country is different, but you have to be prepared to be patient. With patience for me is very difficult. I don't have patience for anything. So I've had to learn how to be patient. And if you want things to happen quickly, believe me when I tell you that's not going to happen. So you have to be patient. Yes.
You've mentioned, seeing corruption in the work that you do now. Do you think your work has become easier as time progressed, or has it become more difficult?
It's become easier. Because I know what I have to do. And I know what positions I'm going to take, and I make my position very clearly to everybody. So there's no question about what I'm willing to do or not do. Anybody else?
We'll take a break now. Yes, a bathroom break, 5 minutes. Please be back at 10:42. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask something to everybody else.
So he was like, yeah, he graduated the year I got into Chelsea. No, there's a. Wait, is Royce also did that. I remember like 2 times saying nuts.
Many years were like.
Yeah. Okay, how does Isaiah? Hey, your name is not Isaiah. Plantain. Why do you want to call Isaiah plantain? No. You only 2 words, mountain and curtain. The other A word is aim, like a normal person, pain, retain, sustain, maintain, so many other things. It's not our words. Tell me how it's pronounced.
We all look good all the time.
You can wear an outfit.
Right, no matter what,
It's like-
how we did it,
Like,
Yeah.
people make outfits. You know what I mean?
Our
So like-
styles are so different.
Yeah, I feel like you can wear something, and someone can wear the exact same thing, and it looks completely different. Like,
That's
it's kind of like a hard to gauge.
But if you have a picture.
but even you have.
But okay, in terms of what?
Style.
You don't have to say like.
No, I'm just saying, like, not in terms of, like, some people are
That's,
wear
that's style.
it's like who always rocks it out
Yeah.
there, regardless of what it is.
So. I'm not sure if it's like around.
Yeah, because I have like kind of picture of what people.
I'm trying to just argue.
Really cool.
Yeah, that's fine.
Right.
When me, I think no matter.
Okay. Welcome back, everybody. Okay, so we'll be doing a quick activity. First of all, out of just curiosity, I want to see who is actually listening. The 4 things Bill shared in the end, that are fundamental. Huh?
We were not asking for.
So you have a question for him?
Yeah, but I don't want.
Okay, yes, right. So the 4 things Bill shared, in conclusion, right? Who remembers what the 4 things are?
I can see.
So Eva,
Don't let anyone tell you that.
thank you.
Don't know.
Is that was your? There's 3 left. Okay, I'll go Leila and then Melissa. Define your goals and be persistent. That was a sub goal, but I'll give that to you, Melissa.
To be patient.
That was also a sub goal.
And one,
I'll give that to
and
you.
one I think I heard though, I didn't get quite.
What was it?
Clearly about not selling or buying stuff.
Yes, thank
didn't get
you.
it.
Yes,
I
that was
didn't understand.
basically around your work. There'll be a lot of, regardless of what you're working on, there's going to be elements where your morality will be called into question, whether it's direct corruption or bribery. But basically, yes,
Oh,
that's basically what it is. So that's one of the points. The other 2 points was one to ensure the sustainability of whatever you're working on, and then to make sure that the community takes ownership of whatever you're doing. So right now we're going to be doing an activity, and Bill will be our consultant in person for whatever your project ideas are. And we'll be going into groups. Basically, how are you going to incorporate the 4 or 3 things into your work? So basically, how are you going to navigate? If somebody comes up to you and tells you, okay, for you to put this up, you need to pay them a certain amount, and you really want to do it, how do you navigate that conversation? Secondly, how do you ensure that what does sustainability for your project or work look like? And finally, how do you ensure that the community takes ownership of your work? For example, let's say a vegan restaurant in Fort Lauderdale. How is that going to be owned by the community? Does that make sense? Okay, so we're going to be divided into groups. We're just going to do this the usual way. So we'll do 6 groups, the numbers. So let's start with
1, 2, 4, 5, 6.
1,
2,
3,
4,
6.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
6,
12,
6,
6.
1,
2,
4, 5, 6, 4, 3, 2,
Okay, that's actually exactly 6 groups. So we will, 1 can come here, 2 can come here, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then you discuss for a few minutes and then you'll have to share and then you get real feedback in real time. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4 is at the door. 5 is at that end. 6 is by where Chris is. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Tall is exactly where 6 is supposed to be. This is 1, this is 2, that is 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 is where Chris and Tall is. So the 3 fronts are, let me get everybody's attention for a second.
Note it down.
So you can note it down for your group, right? So you guys can do multiple projects. You can take one person's project and explore it. But the first thing is, how will the community take ownership of your work? How would you involve them in what you're doing? Number 2 is, how would you ensure that what you're doing is sustainable? It's like Brendan's question to Bill. It's like, how will you ensure that this continues long after you're gone? And then finally, what are some of the things, whether that looks like values or processes or things that, you will do, but how you negotiate with, the corrupt elements of the world? How would you ensure that whatever you're doing stays pure? And of course, that would involve thinking about what the possible things you would have to face are. Did everybody get that? So those are the 3. So you can begin to discuss. Thank you. You have 15 minutes.
So my visionary wanted to start. Yeah.
Yeah, mine had like a little more technical too, by like what she's like the comment. Yeah, I was just trying to. Might also have to do mine is trying to create, to make academic relations or academic environment where everyone's ideas being. Because I'm a senior, I don't have more like that one, but like the idea being the collective education, just like that. Experts, teacher, teaching specialists who like design add rooms. Safeguarding it against, Again, especially when you learn more much about certain. Yeah. The learning been a little bit. The idea is like different specialists. It's very much for profit, but all the services. We think that even with all the applications, we have something like this. You would need additional that's not, it's not a government. We think that's not fair. Everybody should access the applications that they need. Without having to stay in. So within our network, go advocate, we have and we go live to call it. This is what we're kind of no one's against it. It's not legal. Because we provided give us first, like give us like maybe like the teacher or like give us like your dialogue so that everybody can find it. Let's make it, let's redesign it, like make it accessible for the professor. If the professor has a student in class, and they already have different sets of rather than the student having to now go out and in again, go applications so they get the whole time, or extend the deadline. We don't really address the point, like just how do we take this on another institution versus like right now things are very which are great, but it could help everybody. How I explain it last of the time is the wheelchair the building already has you don't build around. Now we have a same kind of thing. You can build around, it's not too much, but it's too much work, it takes time. So that's what it is right now. The first one is how do we make it how do we involve there's, like you said, the student, and then also their students who are in class, there's the professor, the ADA office, the teacher. Right, so community taking accountability in that situation in the actual school, and their faculty taking accountability. That are already implemented, so let's acknowledge that, and then let's share with other universities. In mind for like peers also to be encouraging and inclusive.
No, it's like regular.
Again, maybe like in the product, like designing to work with people on. That is where like, yeah, school districts and like. Yeah, so like a trade-off. Right, and then on like a school level, like being on campus, you take surveys of all of your students. Like, hey, you all have the other person is whole, so you can see what is actually needed. The beginning. That like your school is saying what's and what they need to be there. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about school and everything.
Getting them.
How do we insurance? I guess it's, what if it's this case?
Then they're not gonna buy it.
But when the work is done. How, I don't know, how's the program set up?
Action.
Oh, I thought you were- Oh, I mean.
It's the last time.
What is your?
Oh,
But when you said Nigeria, you kind of like. Like you came back.
Like that's
So that's improved.
why they need the resources, I guess making sure that like.
Yeah, just whisper.
Knowledge.
There you go again.
They,
Do you speak like that?
you know, like. That's a great. Yeah, maybe having that being your virtual thing every like.
I have my.
Similar to what you were saying, educating everyone on it, and also targeting like the low grade level so that as they move up.
Or maybe it's like what grade level, like.
I used to.
And then even with people that you partner with, like maybe have a contract or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
So that you can prepare for when that ends, you already have something in place. Pick up from it or you're renewing. Yeah. The contract still is that, like, what you would think of this weird. What is
Yeah, I genuinely thought you missed me and then I saw the attachment and you're like, you already did. I was like, oh, they don't miss me. I just like.
Right. Amen.
Like it was fine. I like the story kind of for a second. Me and then you're like, oh.
Well, that's after,
Like,
you don't want to the morality of the person, that they feel like it's their opportunity. Yeah.
Oh, thanks so much.
He's like.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
For a month, I lived in
What do you think if you're ever yourself or like you're all the same?
Yeah, also like partner with or any other person out, like looking at.
Yeah, I think it's very.
So being able to like track that and see.
So can you say?
Yeah, and like, if you don't use your part, those, then like I said, and. Yeah, you gotta be that around there.
No,
There's like.
no, because it's
Like
literally
inside airways, like,
that are in there.
and then,
You do not.
transparency. For transparency.
It's segregation that's like happening here, like.
Like transparency, like if they're very clear with what they're gonna. So they say they're not gonna, like, it's no vague like this or anything, like, I think there's like evidence. Like.
Yeah.
Clear, like, on the front side, they really do what's making them.
All of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Having like a backup plan.
Like, our function in the classroom.
So you have to have.
Yeah, it's a very, I actually learned that if I had done that.
It's illegal to bribe. No,
No, it's not.
it's illegal to bribe, but if you get it like,
No, it's not.
technically, yes, it is.
Eddie.
For official step bribe, it's technically illegal. Babe, search it up. Search it up. That's every.
Yeah. Oh. I just.
That's enough to buy. Like, I mean, for that, like, literally, so much for people.
I have.
Your money is so much more than that, like, my mom said it was like, that was.
You gotta put the pressure.
Let me join it. Next to me.
Transparency communication is a effective. See that flexible contracts clearly stimulate expectations of all parties involved. Continuously plan and how do you ensure sustainability? Continuous advocacy for accessibility.
What you can live in is.
I'll get you what my double.
Like literal.
Wait,
But
what
then
you guys were just gonna-
people are proud. There's so many gangbangers, there's so much gangbangers, and not even just that, but like, you see rich, you're getting right.
Recording in progress, but our group seemed to work really well. We fed off of each other a lot, and then we listened, and then we also added in when it was like in a respectful manner, like no interruptions, etc.
Thank you.
Good process.
Thank you. So do you want to?
Yeah, so we went with my venture just because it was a little bit more, I had all first years. So we read it out and we felt like because mine was a little bit more fully fledged out, it was easier to plug in the stuff that we wanted to do. So for starters, the venture being a collective of specialists and experts that could help institutions create a more accessible.
Sorry, do you want to come out? Thank you.
Do I have to start again?
No.
Okay, so. So the venture is a collective of specialists and experts that could help institutions, academic institutions, make the learning environments more accessible for all kinds of students. So people that might have learning disabilities or physical disabilities that are affecting their that directly affect their ability to learn like other people. And so for how we involve the community, the first one was, so this is a very academic solution. The venture is it's supposed to work within an academic institution. The collective can work with faculty
to make curriculums more accessible, right? So one of the activities that this collective can provide or like services is to redesign curricula to make sure that it has room to teach people who learn differently. So we said that in that process, they could work with the faculty within the school and within classes so that there's like a joint sense of ownership. We could ensure that students with learning disabilities, so students who would use or need these services, are able to contribute to the process of creating solutions for them. So that again, a joint sense of ownership. Schools can work with other schools within districts to trade and exchange knowledge on what has worked and what doesn't work, and to share what they get out of the different experiences, just so that they all know that we're all in this together, and nothing is exclusive to one place. And then the last one for that point on how we involve community is awareness outreaches to educate the people within different communities on what the problem is and why the solution is important, right? So just making sure that everybody knows what's happening and understands why it has to happen. How do we ensure sustainability? So continuous advocacy for accessible learning environments. That's something that should never stop, because there will always be a need, because we will always be learning. Keeping track of progress or like consistent measuring of progress. So we don't just enter the institution that we've been contracted to come in, do the work and leave. Like we have to set up actual metrics of measuring progress, making sure so that we can come back and see what's working and what's not, and what can we tweak, what do we take out. Targeting lower grade levels within the academic world, I guess, so that students kind of grow, faculty, institutions kind of put it into like the base level of it. So that we kind of grow parents up. Everybody is in it from when the kid is young and you're in school till like, people are in school till forever. So that's setting up follow-up contracts and audits with institutions. So if we do any work anywhere, we know when we have to come back in and assess the impact that the work has made. So to audit and to see if anything needs to be done, changed, maintained, whatever it is. So, and the last one we have on that point is ensuring alignment in messages. So making sure that all the stakeholders involved are all up to speed on the same situation. Everybody understands again why we have to do it. So faculties, students, institutions, like organizational levels, parents, all stakeholders within education, making sure that we are constantly aligned, we are updated. What values or processes would we include, I guess, to safeguard it against things like corruption, theft, misuse, like that was the last point. So due diligence by checking the history of past partnerships and collaborations and contracts with any institution that we accept or agree to work with, or I guess before we agree to work with them. Blockchain management system for things like intellectual property, like curriculums, just so that we can track, we can trace, we can see what's being used, who changes anything, if anybody tries to tamper with anything. Transparency in communication. So we have to be able to see that what you say you do is what you do, right? So it has to be out there for everybody. We should all be able to see that you do what you mean, what you say, you do what you say. And legal contracts, clearly highlighting expectations of all the parties involved, right? Because again, we mentioned this is a collective, so it would have psychiatric experts, it would have disability experts, it could have instructional design specialists and education designers and just all this and legal advocates. So contracts that clearly stipulate and highlight what everybody's role in any given task is. And the last one is a contingency plan. In case we find out anything about an institution's past that we somehow didn't find out when we were doing our due diligence, if we do want to step out of it, if we want to make changes, if we want to say anything, something already prepared, because stuff happens. So that's all we thought of in that time. And thank you guys for listening.
Thank you. Wait, hold on 1 second, sorry.
Oh.
Bill, any thought? I have 2 questions, but Bill, do you have thoughts?
No, I'm very impressed by your implementation of the concepts that I kind of laid out in my presentations.
I kind of had a good team. Thank you.
Thank you. So I have 2 questions, right? The first question is, one, how is this funded? Because I mean, one of the sources of corruption is money. So they usually say follow the money. So how is this funded?
So the whole idea of the collective is it's profitable, but
it comes at no cost to the student. The end goal is that every student should be able to get all the help that they need to be able to level the playing field within the education experience. So institutions will pay to have the collective come in and help them achieve their accommodation goals. Because again, I don't know if you remember, but ADA is not an option, it's a law. So schools are required to have certain things in place. They are given funding based on what they want to provide and can provide. So they can be given more funding if they want to do a bit more beyond like above. So the schools, institutions will pay, but their money comes from the states.
Awesome. So my second question feeds into the first question and is also a follow-up to the second question about sustainability. ADA is a law, has an asterisk, which is it's a law in the US.
Yeah.
It's not a law in Ghana. It's not a law outside the US. So why should schools feel obligated to pay when they're not required to?
Oh, this was very much only done within the framework of the United States. We
Okay.
didn't, I didn't extrapolate it for back home because there's so much more work back home. It's not even on the radar of things that I know the education system wants to. Ideally, if I'm able to do well enough, I would want people to go back home enough to be able to be in a position where I can influence educational policy. But I want to start from somewhere so that I can also kind of gather my own research and metrics and stuff so that I can make a better case when it comes to that. But I know that. I know that very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions? No? No? Okay, thank you. Group 2. Who was group 2?
All around.
You got it, bro.
Yeah, and this one is.
So one reflection and then I'll make a process and then the answers.
Okay, so for group 2, we decided to, it's reflection, then we give the,
Okay.
so the reflection, we decided to choose Sikolabanji has an organization that is currently overseeing in Nigeria. We decided to choose him so that he would be able to share what the organization was doing in order to meet the 3 questions we had. And apart from that, we listened to him and we asked follow-up questions where we thought like he needed to shed more light or maybe there was something crucial. So yeah, we helped him gather his thoughts.
Thank you, Olabanji. Questions? I can ask you.
Okay.
Yeah, but just shift a little bit. I think the first question is, so you can introduce what the project is about, so everyone knows what it is.
Okay.
And then the first question is, how is the community taking ownership of this? Second question is, what's the sustainability of this? And finally is, what are the checks and balances in place? And how do you plan to tackle corruption within the work that you do?
Okay, so the organization is actually called Pathfinders Africa. So it's an organization in Nigeria working towards making sure children in the rural areas of Nigeria have access to quality education, which will give them the freedom to dream, and at the same time, enable them to live those dreams. And so this is an organization I've actually been working on for over 6 years now. And so regarding the sustainability, many of the guys I actually work with, in which we work with the children, they are really young guys from age 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. So around this time, many of them just go to college. So in order to ensure the sustainability of the organization, we always, every year, we recruit young guys who are just out of high school, so that when those who actually want to go to college, we'll actually be able to have people available on ground, we'll actually be able to make sure the activities of the organization continue every week at the center. So that's how we've actually been able to ensure the sustainability by making sure we have people always available to run the activities of the organization every week.
How does the community take ownership of this?
Yeah, for how the community take ownership, we've actually been working with the parents of the kids So work with the parents of the kids we're actually working with a lot. With that, we've actually been, because where I come from, it's actually be hard to see that parents will actually release their kids to you, for them to be with you even for an hour. But then for these kids, we actually work with them almost every day when the school is not in session. And when the school is on session, work with them on Fridays and Saturday. So for parents to actually release their kids for you for that so long, actually shows that the parents, they are really part of what we're doing. And on various occasions, we've had some of these parents come to the center and, give us money and just ask us if we need anything, that they actually love what we're doing and they actually want to be part of it. So the parents are actually well carried along about some of the stuff we're doing. So I actually feel like, yeah.
That's how the community takes ownership of it. So what are the checks and balances in place for corruption?
Yeah, for corruption, I feel like back in Nigeria, you know how it works.
I don't know how it works, but tell me.
It's actually a bit rough, let me put it that way, especially for a non-profit organization where we have different young people. And when money begins to come in, when we have money on ground in the course of the organization, there are a lot of in and out. And just like I shared with my group, we've had a couple of issues with having the money in the organizational account. At a time, whenever we have money before we open an account, a bank account for the organization. So we do keep the money with the treasurer of the organization. And there were times when we've had issue with the treasurer spending some of the monies of the organization, probably due to some urgent reasons, some emergencies and all of that. So, and one of the ways we've actually been able to deal with that in recent years is we open an account for the organization in which we need at least 3 members of the organization to be able to access the organization account. So if we don't have 3 members of the organization at the bank, there's no way you can withdraw any money from the organization first. So with that, no one can just go and withdraw the money of the organization without other members of the organization knowing. So that's how we've actually been able to do that.
What if the 3 people are in on it?
No, there's no way. I'm actually one of the main person involved in that. I will have the secretary and the treasurer as well.
But you are here.
I'm here.
So how do you go to the bank in Nigeria?
When I'm not here, the vice president is standing for me.
Okay. So what is the vice president's name?
Huh?
Issues. You guys just sat here and listened to him say there were some in and outs. You didn't even ask what in and out means.
Hold up, because that was my team member.
Okay, so do you want to step in?
He did explain it very well. And I
Okay.
think his philosophy and his idea of having 3 individuals at the same time to actually pull money out of the bank is very smart. He is looking at ways to get around that issue that he's getting into. Now, should he face that issue again, he's here and the other individual is over there in Nigeria, the vice president. I think that they're doing what they need to do. They're doing their due diligence. You have people who, you have to look into, somebody who's in your company. Yes, we can't trust everybody with what the money and stuff like that. He obviously has a group within that started with him that he can really trust from the people before that he couldn't trust. If that makes sense. Just like what William said, it just be, make sure you know the people you're working with. That's what he's doing. He's making sure the people he's working with are the people that he knows are on his corner.
Okay, but
What now?
if the 3 people are in on it, no, if the 3 people are in on it, what happens? Listen, I sit on the board of a non-profit as well. These are very common issues. It is not out of, it's not out of the possibility that the 3 people can be in on it. So the question is, if there are 3 people in on it, what happens?
I really doubt that will ever happen.
So I doubt and I hope it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But if it happens, what happens? So I think this is a very important lesson, right? Because, when you think about a lot of these issues, like nobody wants these things to happen, right? But one of the things about leadership, and if you ever, work in an organization, if you ever work in a nonprofit, is to preempt some of these things, right? So what happens when it happens? If it happens, right? It's a possibility that it would happen. It's a possibility that it can happen. I've seen very honest people, people misuse funds, so and I'll tell you, even with my organization, I never had direct access to the finances of the organization. And the reason why I never had access to the finances of the organization was because I never even wanted to have the choice to even, be put in that situation at all. So it's about preempting these things. And that's why we're asking these questions, right? Because the questions we're asking has not even happened yet, right? So I think that's great. I'm not trying to poke holes in Olabanji's organization. It's an opportunity to think critically about these issues. So thank you, Olabanji. Your group came to your rescue. Okay, for group 3, who's representing group 3?
You guys. Okay, well, I guess I'll
do reflection.
I'll do both.
Okay, so you can come on. Yeah, thank you.
The conversations that we had in week 3, we all kind of threw out ideas of why communities matter, or why do the communities
how do they have ownership?
Like, how do they have ownership of our ventures? And we think that people make communities, and when working with people, those interactions between peoples are what causes the communities to have ownership, because they are probably the biggest part of the ventures that we're doing, or the impact that we're trying to create. In terms of the questions that we tried to answer, I think I was kind of poking the bear, kind of picking on Sonam in terms of.
So tell us about what he does, because I mean, not everybody knows.
Yeah, I don't want to do an injustice to Sonam, so
Okay,
I'd advise him to.
Thank you.
Explain it. Yeah.
Hello, everybody. So just to give the context of what I do, I make handmade greeting cards, and we use the bark of a plant to make the paper, and we use that paper to make greeting cards. And I was trying to find it hard. I didn't know how to answer the question, so he just came up with the question. Okay, what you're gonna do if you have 1 million cards demand in a month? And that got me thinking of how can I meet the demand, and I thought it was not sustainable to run this business, because at some point I might be if I hit the 1 million cards a month, I won't be able to meet the demand for the supply chain issue. So what I thought of is these plants, they are grown everywhere in certain altitude in Nepal, and there are only few hundred of paper manufacturers who are using the resources. So what I came up with the idea was we are going to purchase the product, the parts from the local producers, and that way we can get the producer involved, get the community involved in our project, and that's how we can get our community involved. And this and about the sustainability, so we came up with the idea like we can diversify the production line, maybe producing paper using not the bark of plant, but using the banana tree, or elephant poop, or something else. So we can make paper using the elephant poop. Yeah, that's how we can make it more sustainable in terms of production, and also get the community involved.
So I was a part of this conversation a little bit, and for those of you who know what Sonam does, he basically makes handmade greeting cards from the bark of trees. And so I'd asked him, how long does it take for the trees to regenerate the bark? And he said 3 months. So I said, what happens when you have a demand of 1 million cards a month? How do you get this back of trees? Will you cut down the trees? What's the plan? And so what he just explained was basically the that he plans to diversify his production line with elephant poop and banana stem. So be careful, there are cards in your hands that might be elephant. I'm kidding. But the second question that we had was, how do you checkmate corruption within the work that you do?
Yeah, we didn't think of that, but how can I, if I have to answer this question, I would say I'll have some board members in the company, and so that the board members will keep each other check and balance. Yeah, that will be my answer.
To how the board members keep each other in check.
Yeah.
So what about you? No, Sonam, you. You're the CEO of the company. You're saying the board needs to keep each other check and balance. So what about you? How do you plan to navigate, corruption? What are the checks and balances to hold you accountable?
Yeah, the board members will hold me accountable,
Okay.
just like I hold them accountable. Yeah, just forming just converting this company into corporation, and I have seen a huge company in India. It's called Amul. They buy milk from local farmers, and it's a really huge corporation. So they have like big board members, and then there's no corruption involved, and they have been able to manage corruption in a way. So yeah, I think I'll follow their same model to tackle the corruption.
Awesome. And finally, how does the community take ownership of this?
Oh, so I said I'm gonna buy the barks of that local plant from the farmers, so that will involve the producers. So because there are a lot of plants that grows and it just grows and it just dies at some point. It's not leveraged. The resource is not leveraged, so we can leverage the resources by paying the producers as well.
Awesome. You.
Good answer.
It's fascinating. Never thought about making breeding cards.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, group 4. Who's responding for group 4?
I'll do the reflection and everything.
Okay.
Okay, so our group had like a good mix of people from different cohorts. So everybody was like in a different stage in their mission. And we decided to go with Eva's because within her project with Africa is like a more developed one. But when talking, we realized that we were kind of involved with what she's been doing through like the years in Watson, and we all know like a little bit of what she does. And I think it was like good. How can I say it? Like we realized that she developed this project through her years in Watson and using like the resources available like in the university in Lynn to like make her project like come alive. And like right now she's relying on Silo as a club to like her and do that connection from the organization to the community. And maybe as like the organization grows, she can like do more partnerships, but she's planting the seed now.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, so tell us about Afrix, and then you can respond to the 3 prompts.
So Afrix is a movement. We are the Afrix movement. Afrix has its name for Afro-Latinx because those are the individuals that we are targeting to help. Our mission is to not only empower, but also inform children in low-income minority communities of their opportunities and resources after graduating high school. So right now, the main thing that we are focused on is creating a college pen pal network.
which what that means and what that looks like is having current college students be able to communicate with current high school juniors and seniors and kind of be a guide for them in the entire application process, in kind of really seeing what it is that they want to do with their lives, as well as just having any answers, any questions answered that they may have about college in general. So with that, in terms of sustainability, I've actually thought long and hard about this. So this actually helps me like kind of come full circle with it. Obviously I'm leaving for grad school. So AFREX will continue on through Silo, like Samantha was saying. There will be an AFREX committee in Silo. And through that, they will be continuing on the college pen pal network for years. Hopefully, that's the plan. So I am passing the torch to Tanya. Where's Tanya? There she is. I'm passing the torch to Tanya. And yeah, so it's going to be continuing on through there. I currently do have a connection within the Miami-Dade County Public School System. We are currently setting up a meeting to already start connecting the pen pal people, the pen pal college students to the high school students. So yeah, definitely excited about that. And then obviously I will pass on the connection and hopefully it just continues from there and it expands as well. In terms of community, it's been widely accepted from the Lynn community. I'm very happy about it. Everyone that I've ever spoken to it has only been positive and wants to either like get involved or be able to help in some way, shape, or form. And so I don't really expect any other backlash from the community. Also, administration has been super open about it. Administration's like excited about it as well. So as long as students are informed about it and administration is made aware of everything, the community should be good and thriving. In terms of compromising decisions or there being corruption, there will be, as soon as everything is official, contracts from both the high schoolers and as well as the college pen pals, just because we are aware like these are minors that are high schoolers. And I would hope no one were to like say something inappropriate or anything, but there will be a contract like setting your expectations as a college pen pal student and what it is that you are required to do and what is expected and maintained. As well as kind of just overseeing the relationships on top of that. So yeah, any questions?
Thank you very much. Yes, now.
Oh, thank you.
So I'll ask you a similar question that I asked Sure.
Yes.
The money, management of
There's no
funds.
money.
Africa sells bracelets and.
It does.
Yeah.
AFREX sells bracelets, so
What did you say?
I bought 6 bracelets.
I think it should, but AFREX will like, once the final products are done, AFREX will solely be the AFREX movement within Silo.
Okay.
Yeah.
So no money, no merch, no bracelets, is that what you're saying?
Mhm.
Okay.
You obviously don't have a problem with corruption.
Because there's no money. Okay, so I guess my other question to that will be how is the current like funds managed? What's that process like now?
So right now, obviously like we'll have like AFREX pop-ups here and there for the AFREX Nation bracelets. And money does go back into outreach, really. Like really all the money is going into outreach and trying to connect as many people as possible, see if there's more that can be done and so on and so forth. But in terms of like just, that's really it. Like that's where funds are going. Outreach as well as like the website. Because you have to pay for the website, yeah.
And when there's no longer money, how would you cover administrative costs and website costs and all?
There
that?
just won't be one anymore. Like it will simply be part of a club.
I see.
It will just be the AFREX committee within Silo.
I see. Thank you very much. Okay, group 5.
We got a couple. All right. Good evening. Thanks, everybody. Want me to explain how the drill started with the corruption?
Yeah, let me go first. So what we did is that this may sound very cynical or dark, but we looked at the whole non-profit thing. And then we also, because all of us are from different countries, and all of our countries are third world countries. So what we did in that is that we assessed where we sit in the economic scale. So we said, what generation of wealth are you? Are you the first generation? Are you the first person to go to college? And are you creating an avenue for everyone else? And then with that, we asked ourselves a question like, is it fair, for you to go the nonprofit route? Or are you creating something for your family? That's the one thing that we did. Then the next thing that we looked at is that we looked at what is community where you're from. So me being South African, we have this famous proverb that says, "Umuntu ngumuntu ngabantu." So I am because the people are. You understand? So when I brought my experience, my country to the group, I said that in my community, a lot of people come and they really, really want to help. But what they don't understand is that they don't have a full grasp of the issues that we're facing. And then the next thing we said is that, okay, cool, if we want to help, how does that work? Then we said that the number one thing that the people from our countries want is opportunities. Opportunity is the biggest thing. So then we tied that together and said, okay, cool, how do we meet each other halfway? How do we emancipate the people where we're from? And how do we emancipate our families simultaneously? And then we said, okay, cool, we want to go the for-profit route. Then what we did is that we wanted to survey the ecosystem of like where we're working. And we also said corruption is a big thing where we're from. Because small thing like if you want the job, you have to pay the manager to get the job, right? And then what we looked at is that
We got no jobs.
in my country, you understand? In my country, you have to pay the manager to get the job. For you to get the grants, you have to promise the person who's writing the grants that he's going to get a cut. And that's just the way that it is where we're from. So once we looked at everything and put it together, we said, okay, cool. Whose mission area are we going to work with? And then wanted to open a coffee thing in Nicaragua.
Yeah, well, that was the resolution. First, we started looking which one we were gonna get first. So Romachica said my project in Nicaragua. So mission area is the alleviation of the poverty of Nicaragua by the promotion of entrepreneurship and the creation of business. I think that that's the main thing in Stepstone. That is the only thing that can really help the poverty of a country. If you increase the businesses and you get people employed and people are making money. So I had a little project. It might be a go in the future, it might not. Maybe it's a big project. I wanted to open a coffee farm in Nicaragua with fair trade. I wanted to get a coffee farm. It's a big production system. It has all the way from farming to the producing to the selling to the packaging. It's a big production system that I work in the project to create and the scale of the project. I believe that my focus target was people finding Nicaragua, 70% of Nicaraguan people lives in rural areas. So finding where I can start this coffee farm that has the most people living in poverty around it, because there is many places like that, and just getting the locals to start working for me. And of course, implementing a fair trade model inside of it. What we were talking about then, it was like that's pretty much my model. Well, then we went through the questions and we got really focused on the corruption side of it. Not just corruption inside of the organization, but corruption in general. For me, in order to open that coffee farm, I will need to be corrupted. I will need to, in the way that Nicaragua is set up, we will need to be corrupted. For me to get my permits and everything, and to get everything set up, and for me to get the land, and for me to establish everything and be okay in all the laws aspects, I need to pay. I'll need to pay police officers. I'll need to pay people in power. I need to pay lawyers. I'll need to pay for that because that's how it is. There were tons of businesses in Nicaragua that follow the regular law. You know, as here in America, you can open your LLC, you can start your business, you get your retail certificate, and you start selling your stuff. But in Nicaragua, no, and a lot of people that had their businesses, they needed to pay to the cops to leave them alone, to let them keep making money, or you needed to pay your fracture to if you were a big corporation to the government for your stuff and everything, and all that is corrupted. So we were just
got into a
So your
resolution.
answer to the second question is that you're going to embrace it.
What do you want me to do? Okay, let's say.
No, I mean, I do appreciate your honesty.
No, but you
And I
have to.
also understand the context that
Mhm.
you're also coming from.
Unfortunately,
I'd
right
like
now,
to hear Bill's response to that.
Well, I've never been confronted with a situation where you have to pay all these people into the business. It's just
Mhm.
a new concept. I
Well-
understand you don't have any choice.
that is how, well, I'm from Nicaragua. I don't think I mentioned that. I'm from Nicaragua. That is how it's set up. That is how it's set up. It is with the current people that are in power right now and how the corruption has been going. It's been a long, long time. And this is not like in the first 2000, from the year 2000 to the 2017, where the economy was growing. I think the growth was 3.9%, and the government brought a lot of international affairs for companies internationally to set up their headquarters and stuff and run operations in the country. Right now, the situation, for my personal understanding, has changed a lot. I have many friends with businesses, and I have many family friends with businesses and everything. And for you to start an operation like that if you really want to set up a business, you need to, some way or the other, be corrupted. There is corruption in the system itself. You can get out of the freeway.
I think embrace is the wrong word. I think what we're saying is that you need to navigate the corruption. And I think we look at corruption as a formality, in the sense that for the end goal to happen, we have to navigate corruption in the sense that you have to pay, you understand, for the end goal to happen. And I think with what you said during the master course, understanding your goal, understanding that you need to get there. Just 2 seconds. Understanding your goal, understand that you need to get there, and understand that not everything where you're from will happen in the most positive of lights, but knowing who you're doing this for. So what we did is that we wanted to measure progress within this coffee farm. And then we said, okay, cool. I think we measure progress by the amount of jobs and opportunities that we create for the people who exist there. You see, where I'm from, people come and they give money out. The community doesn't care about that. What the community cares about most is emancipation. What the community cares about most is you creating an avenue for people to make money. With that being said, if you must be the first person to help everyone get out of their situations, then maybe the negative externalities that is bribing is okay to get to the end goal. And I think that it would be very naive of us and very kumbaya-ish to be, okay, cool, we're going to make it fairly. We're going to make it without paying. Maybe in the United States, systems like that exist. But I think it's up to us as the people to create systems where we're from, where things can happen fairly. But right now.
And for you, that's corrupt systems. Okay. So I'll give her, I'm just trying to wrap up because Group 6 has to go.
Just a comment, like I really understand where Joanne is coming from, because Venezuela and Nicaragua like function in a similar way in regards of corruption. And like I do agree, like you shouldn't be doing stuff that can get you to jail because that's awful. But at the same time, you have either two options, and that's what I don't focus my mission area, and I never did in my Watson journey in Venezuela because I didn't want to deal with that. But then you realize that if you're going to step away from that, you're leaving people behind. Like if you don't agree of being a little bit corrupt in the country, you're like, there's people there that still need the food. There's people there that still need the job, the employment. So like, I understand, and I always strive to be on a high ground and be morally positive. But there's some situations in countries like Nicaragua, like Venezuela, where the corruption is like very, very rooted in like not only like the system, but also the people's mind. That like, I don't judge people that are still doing business in Venezuela or in Nicaragua, because those exact businesses that to like moral standards are not good are the business that are feeding the people that are there right now. So it's very difficult, and it's not an easy decision to make. And like I really admire like Joanne and panache to like stand there and have a controversial opinion, because not everybody's gonna see it that way, and you have to like experience and have personal connections to that type of system to understand where they're coming from. So
Thank you. Thank you. I believe morale is a commodity when you're trying to survive. So for it, like, and even following a point that Samantha said, Venezuela, it's worse than, currently it's worse than my country right now. But following the point, it's not even that bravery, that is not going against the law, that is the law. If you go against it, then you go to prison. Then they create, how is the stuff that they're going to prison now? What is the name? They say like all these people that were in the protest, they have a name for them?
terrorists.
Well, not terrorists. Yeah, but they current terrorists against the government, and anything, if you go against the regulations they have right now, anything is terrorism against the government, like you're going against them, against their dictatorship, and you go to prison. That's been happening a lot.
So I'm definitely glad that you guys shared, because I mean, this is the reality of doing any kind of good in the world. It's not going to be a breeze. It's not going to be a direct path. And the most important thing is definitely being able to make informed decisions, right? It's like, you know exactly what you're getting into, and then you count your cost and you're willing to get into it, right? So I want to say thank you for sharing. Thank you for your honesty, and thank you for the insights you provided. And I'd like to invite group 6. Who is in group 6? Yes. And who is going to share the questions? Who? Vico. Okay.
Okay, so pretty much, we kind of did it a little different. I think we misunderstood it. But we pretty much just discussed each questions like for every one of our ventures and how like it would apply for us each. So yeah, we just didn't focus on one, but we like had discussions on like what were the most general topics of it. So it was like Brandon, Paul, Nicole, Prince, and I. So we had different topics like education, sports, always like speaking and like talks and trying others, and then electric batteries and cars, and then art. So it was like a variety of topics, and we find a lot of similarities between them, and how like, for example, corruption, sustainability, or having ownership in your community were like seen and can be applied to each one of them regarding each other.
Hi everyone. So my venture's name is Vera Innovation, and our goal is to innovate the K-12 education system in China by our self-designed game boards and virtual platform.
So your prompts for the question: how is it sustainable? How is the community involved? And how are you checkmating corruption?
And how do we measure whether we are sustainable or not? I think internally whether we will measure whether we are profitable or not. Because whether we can keep generating the revenue is one of the factors that we measure whether our solution is sustainable or not. And externally, we will measure whether it is scalable or not. Because like in education, I think the measurement is really pretty intangible, because it's really hard to measure whether it works for our customer or not. But we'll measure whether we can keep the long-term partnership and also the long-term growth to the schools and the students, so that we can measure whether our solutions is sustainable. And for, what is the second question?
How is the community involved?
First of all, we set up a chapter system, just like Millennium Fellowship and TEDx, they also have the chapter system. So we develop the content, we develop game boards, but we have different chapters in different cities and also different countries around the world. Like in 2023, we started a program like globally, so that more like the co-partners in different countries, we can also develop workshops and training programs in different countries, but not just in China. And if they join our partner program, they can also co-design the model that we have, like co-design the game board, so that it is specifically for that community in their country, and also based on the curriculum they learn at school, but not just within China. So the range of our products is not limited just in China. And second one is also collecting the feedback from our customers so that we will have their insights in our content development. And although we are the one who develop the product, it's our customer who creates the solution. And for the corruption one, I think it's really hard to avoid corruption, but because we have developed like around 1 year, we know that it's really hard to revolutionize the corruption system within the application area. But what we can do is to make sure the money go into the problem, but not the solution only. Because a lot of the organizations and companies in China, not only in China, but also around the world, they are doing the same things. They keep repeating the same solutions, but the money or the resources, they don't go into the problem solving. So what we can do internally and also externally is to make sure the money and the resources go into the problem, the root cause, but not only the solution. So try not to be immersive in our solution, but try to focus on the problems that our customer have. And also because we have a corporate account, so our bank will also measure whether we have the corruption in our bank account or not. And at the same time, I have a board member, but we also have an advisory committee. So we would keep reporting the weekly memo or a monthly financial statement to our advisory committee so that they will see whether we have any issues with our financial statement or not. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Very interesting. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. At this point, I'd like to invite you up here, Bill. We want to profoundly thank you for gracing us with your presence today. And you can just yes. And on behalf of Watson Institute, National Mayor will.
Thank you so much, Bill. It's been an honor to meet you and to hear from you and to hear that you have been able to be persistent. Usually we would hear about persistence and fighting to achieve our goals, but you are an embodiment of that. You have chased your goals and achieved them for over 40 years. And we're extremely, extremely honored to be able to learn from you. I think for most of us, the biggest takeaway as young change makers who want to do so much in the world has been to never let anybody tell us that we cannot do something. And I think that's something that we would all hold really dearly. Thank you so much for your wisdom. Thank you so much for your candor. Thank you so much for what you do on the continent, as well as somebody who comes from the continent. I'm from Ghana, by the way. So here at Watson, we like to say that we protect our courage. And you clearly have protected your courage all these years that you have worked and impacted communities in the way that you have, and you have empowered us to do the same. And so not all heroes wear capes, but you need a cape. So we're gonna cape you at Watson as a sign of protecting your courage and in turn our courage. It will look like I'm choking you, but I promise you. There we go, superhero. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Bill. Thank you. I know this is really hard to pull off considering you're traveling tomorrow. But we're grateful for your presence. We're grateful for your wisdom. And we're grateful for you just being here and talking with us today, answering questions and sharing your reflections, your heart and reflections. Thank you. And thank you everybody for sitting through this Impact Series workshop. We're going to go out right now to take a quick photo, and then for those of us who are on the community table, we will meet at Elaine's by the cafeteria. But thank you so much once again, and have a wonderful day.
Oh, okay.
Just like I went to it. Yeah, all the entire gone. It's gone forever. Plays everything. Like if you have all the teams of show. No, like
People have.
Let's go take pictures, people. Hello, hello, let's go. Thank you.
This is a woman.
I look like a mug.
I won't be happy.
Okay, let's talk then.
What was your suggestion?